On January 12, 2010, a cataclysmic event unfolded in Haiti, changing the nation's landscape and impacting millions of lives. At precisely 4:53 p.m. local time, a powerful earthquake struck the Caribbean nation, registering a magnitude of 7.0. This seismic event was centered near Léogâne, approximately 25 kilometers, 16 miles, west of Port-au-Prince, Haiti's bustling capital city. The earthquake was not only a sudden and violent jolt, but also a disaster of unprecedented scale that brought widespread destruction and suffering. Haiti, located on the island of Hispaniola, shares its territory with the Dominican Republic. The island has a history of seismic activity due to its position on the boundary between the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates. The geological setting makes it particularly susceptible to earthquakes. This vulnerability had been evident in the past, with significant tremors recorded in 1751 and 1770 that affected the region. However, the 2010 earthquake was unparalleled in its severity and impact. The Enriquillo Plantain Garden fault system, which runs through the region, was the source of the earthquake. This fault system is a complex network where the Caribbean and North American plates converge. For decades, stress had been accumulating along this fault line without major releases. On that fateful day, the accumulated stress was released in a sudden rupture, producing a massive earthquake that would prove catastrophic. Port-au-Prince, the capital city, is a densely populated urban area with a high concentration of buildings and infrastructure. The city, already struggling with poverty and limited resources, bore the brunt of the earthquake's impact. Many of its buildings were constructed with inadequate materials and techniques, exacerbating the damage. The shaking caused by the earthquake resulted in the collapse of countless structures, including residential buildings, commercial properties, and government offices. The immediate aftermath of the quake was chaotic. The ground shook violently, with the initial tremor lasting just under 30 seconds. Despite the short duration, the effects were devastating. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble, and the landscape of Port-au-Prince was forever altered. The earthquake's force was so intense that it caused severe damage to the infrastructure and disrupted essential services such as electricity, water supply, and telecommunications. In the hours following the quake, the scale of the destruction became increasingly evident. The Haitian government, already operating under strained conditions, struggled to respond to the disaster. The lack of preparedness for such a large-scale event left the nation struggling to manage the immediate and overwhelming needs of its people. International aid organizations and foreign governments quickly mobilized to provide assistance. However, the delivery of aid faced significant obstacles. The earthquake had damaged roads and bridges, making transportation of relief supplies difficult. The port of Port-au-Prince, a critical point for receiving international aid, was also affected, compounding the challenges faced by relief efforts. The human toll of the earthquake was staggering. Estimates suggest that over 250,000 people lost their lives, and more than 300,000 were injured. The quake left approximately 1.5 million people homeless, many of whom were forced to seek shelter in makeshift camps. The destruction of homes, schools, and hospitals left survivors without basic necessities and essential services. The immediate response to the disaster highlighted the severe limitations of Haiti's emergency management infrastructure. The country's weak building codes and inadequate urban planning contributed to the extent of the damage. The earthquake exposed the vulnerability of Haiti's infrastructure and underscored the need for improved disaster preparedness and response mechanisms. In summary, the 2010 Haiti earthquake was a defining moment in the nation's history. The initial tremor and its aftermath revealed the profound challenges faced by Haiti, from the immediate destruction to the long-term recovery efforts. The earthquake's impact was felt not only in the physical devastation, but also in the human suffering and the immense task of rebuilding a nation. The catastrophic 2010 Haiti earthquake resulted from a complex interaction of geological forces, primarily involving the movement of tectonic plates. To understand the formation of this devastating earthquake, it's essential to delve into the geological background of the region and the immediate sequence of events on January 12, 2010. Haiti is situated on the island of Hispaniola, which is located at the boundary between the Caribbean plate and the North American plate. This tectonic boundary is characterized by a series of faults, including the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault System. The Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault is a strike-slip fault, meaning that the plates slide past each other horizontally. This fault system has been the source of significant seismic activity in the region, with stress accumulating over time due to the slow, relentless movement of the tectonic plates. For decades prior to the earthquake, the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault System had been experiencing increased stress due to the ongoing tectonic forces. Despite the accumulation of strain, there had been no significant earthquake release along this fault, leading to a buildup of potential energy. This stress accumulation is what ultimately triggered the catastrophic event on January 12, 2010. On that fateful day at precisely 4:53 p.m. local time, the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault System experienced a sudden rupture. The earthquake struck with a magnitude of 7.0, a powerful force capable of causing widespread destruction. The epicenter of the quake was located near Léogâne, approximately 25 kilometers, 16 miles, west of Port-au-Prince, the capital city of Haiti. The earthquake's rupture occurred along a section of the fault where stress had accumulated over many years. The release of this stress produced a violent shaking of the ground, felt intensely throughout the region. The seismic waves radiated outward from the epicenter, causing significant ground movement and structural damage. In the moments immediately following the quake, the intensity of the shaking was overwhelming. The tremor lasted just under 30 seconds, but during this brief period, the impact was profound. The ground shook violently and many buildings and structures, already vulnerable due to inadequate construction standards, collapsed under the force of the quake. The immediate effects of the earthquake were catastrophic. In Port-au-Prince, the capital city, the tremor caused widespread destruction. Buildings that had stood for years, including homes, commercial properties, and government offices, were reduced to rubble. Streets and infrastructure were severely damaged, with roads buckling and bridges collapsing. The impact on the population was devastating. Many people were caught off guard, and the collapse of buildings resulted in a significant number of casualties. In the first few hours following the earthquake, the full extent of the damage began to emerge. The scenes were chaotic and harrowing. Streets filled with debris, injured people seeking help, and survivors trying to rescue those trapped under the rubble. The earthquake's force also caused landslides and structural failures in areas surrounding Port-au-Prince, amplifying the overall impact. The tremor disrupted essential services such as electricity, water supply, and telecommunications, compounding the challenges faced by the survivors and emergency responders. In the immediate aftermath of the quake, the Haitian government faced enormous challenges in coordinating a response. The destruction of key government buildings and the disruption of communication networks hindered the ability to assess the situation and mobilize resources effectively. The scale of the disaster overwhelmed the nation's emergency management infrastructure, which was already operating under significant strain. International aid organizations and foreign governments quickly began to mobilize relief efforts. However, the delivery of aid faced considerable obstacles. The destruction of roads and infrastructure made it difficult to transport relief supplies to affected areas. The port of Port-au-Prince, a crucial point for receiving international aid, was also impacted, further complicating the distribution of assistance. The first day of the earthquake was marked by confusion, desperation, and the urgent need for coordinated rescue and relief efforts. As the extent of the destruction became clearer, it was evident that the road to recovery would be long and challenging. The initial response highlighted both the immediate needs of the survivors and the logistical hurdles faced by those attempting to provide assistance. In summary, the formation of the 2010 Haiti earthquake resulted from the complex interactions of tectonic forces along the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault System. The earthquake's immediate impact was devastating, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. The first day following the quake was characterized by intense shaking, severe damage, and significant challenges in responding to the crisis. The events of January 12, 2010 set the stage for a long and arduous recovery process for Haiti. The earthquake that struck Haiti on January 12, 2010 had a profound and far-reaching impact, particularly on the cities and densely populated areas. The destruction caused by the earthquake was catastrophic, leaving a lasting mark on the urban landscape and the people who lived there. In this part, we will explore the earthquake's impact on Haiti's cities, the immediate effects of the disaster, and the human toll it took. Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, bore the brunt of the earthquake's destructive power. As the most populous city in the country, with over 2 million residents, it was the epicenter of the nation's government, commerce, and culture. The city was already grappling with issues of poverty, inadequate infrastructure, and overcrowding. which only exacerbated the disaster's effects. When the earthquake struck, the results were devastating. The city's buildings, many of which were poorly constructed and lacked proper reinforcement, crumbled under the intense shaking. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble in seconds. Iconic landmarks such as the Presidential Palace, the National Assembly Building, and the Port-au-Prince Cathedral were severely damaged or completely destroyed. Residential areas were hit hardest, with thousands of homes collapsing, often with people trapped inside. The densely packed neighborhoods, built on steep hillsides and unstable ground, were particularly vulnerable to the quake's force. The destruction of these homes left countless families without shelter, forced to live in makeshift camps amid the debris. The town of Léogâne, located near the earthquake's epicenter, suffered near total destruction. It is estimated that up to 90% of the buildings in Léogâne were either destroyed or severely damaged. The town's population, which was around 134,000 at the time, faced an almost unimaginable level of devastation. The loss of life was significant, and the survivors were left with little to no resources to rebuild their lives. The surrounding areas, including smaller towns and rural communities, also experienced severe damage. The earthquake's impact extended beyond the immediate vicinity of the epicenter, with tremors felt across much of the country. However, the lack of infrastructure and the remote location of many of these communities made it difficult for aid to reach them quickly, further compounding their suffering. The earthquake caused widespread damage to Haiti's infrastructure, crippling the country's ability to respond to the disaster and provide for the needs of its people. Roads were severely damaged or blocked by debris, making it nearly impossible for vehicles to pass through. This hampered rescue efforts and delayed the delivery of much-needed aid to affected areas. The port of Port-au-Prince, a vital hub for importing goods and receiving international aid, was severely damaged, with its main wharf partially submerged. This disruption of maritime transportation further isolated Haiti from the outside world in its hour of need. The capital's main airport was also damaged, though it remained operational, becoming a critical lifeline for the influx of international aid and emergency responders. Public utilities, including electricity, water, and sanitation, were heavily impacted by the earthquake. Power outages were widespread, and the city's water supply system was disrupted, leaving many without access to clean drinking water. The lack of basic services increased the risk of disease outbreaks, particularly in the crowded makeshift camps where survivors sought refuge. The human toll of the earthquake was staggering. The Haitian government estimated that over 230,000 people lost their lives as a result of the disaster, though the exact number remains uncertain. Hundreds of thousands more were injured, many with severe life-threatening injuries that required urgent medical attention. The destruction of hospitals and medical facilities left the healthcare system in shambles, unable to cope with the overwhelming number of casualties. In addition to the immediate loss of life, the earthquake left over 1.5 million people homeless. Displaced families were forced to live in temporary shelters, often in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. These makeshift camps sprang up in open spaces, parks, and along roadsides, creating a humanitarian crisis that would persist for years. The emotional and psychological impact on the survivors was profound. Many people lost not only their homes and belongings, but also loved ones. The trauma of the earthquake, coupled with the uncertainty of the future, left deep scars on the Haitian population. The sense of loss and grief was palpable as communities struggled to come to terms with the scale of the disaster. The earthquake also had a devastating impact on Haiti's economy, which was already fragile before the disaster. The destruction of businesses, government buildings, and infrastructure crippled the country's economic activity. The informal sector, which many Haitians relied on for their livelihoods, was particularly hard hit, with markets and small businesses destroyed. Reconstruction efforts would require massive financial resources, far beyond what Haiti could manage on its own. The country's reliance on international aid became even more pronounced in the aftermath of the earthquake, as it faced the daunting task of rebuilding not only its physical infrastructure, but also its economy. The immediate effects of the earthquake left Haiti in a state of crisis. The country faced an unprecedented humanitarian disaster, with millions of people in desperate need of assistance. The scale of the destruction and the challenges of providing aid in such a devastated environment highlighted the vulnerabilities of a nation already struggling with poverty, political instability, and underdevelopment. In the days and weeks that followed the earthquake, the world watched as Haiti grappled with the enormity of the disaster. The international community responded with an outpouring of support, but the road to recovery would be long and arduous. The impact of the earthquake on Haiti's cities, infrastructure, and people was profound, leaving a legacy that would shape the nation's future for years to come. In the immediate aftermath of the 2010 Haiti earthquake, the nation was thrust into a state of chaos and despair. The destruction was so extensive that it affected nearly every aspect of daily life, leaving the country in desperate need of help. Part 4 will explore the aftermath of the disaster, including the widespread destruction of homes and infrastructure, the response to the crisis, and the ongoing struggle for recovery. The earthquake's impact on Haiti's infrastructure was catastrophic, but the destruction of homes and entire communities was even more devastating on a personal level. Over 1.5 million people were displaced, forced to flee their shattered homes and seek shelter wherever they could. Makeshift camps quickly sprang up across Port-au-Prince and surrounding areas as people constructed temporary shelters from whatever materials they could find: sheets, tarps, and pieces of scrap metal. These camps, often overcrowded and lacking basic amenities, became the new reality for many Haitians. Living conditions were dire, with limited access to clean water, sanitation, and healthcare. The spread of disease became a constant threat, particularly in the hot and humid climate. The lack of adequate shelter and the fear of aftershocks added to the physical and psychological toll on survivors. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble with no clear path to rebuilding. The destruction of homes meant not only the loss of personal property, but also the loss of family history and heritage. Many survivors were left to mourn the death of loved ones buried beneath the ruins, as the process of recovering bodies was slow and painful. Haiti's already fragile public services and infrastructure were pushed to the brink of collapse by the earthquake. The destruction of government buildings, including the Presidential Palace and the National Assembly, created a power vacuum at a time when strong leadership was desperately needed. Many government officials were killed or injured, and those who survived struggled to coordinate the country's response to the crisis. The collapse of public services was felt most acutely in the healthcare sector. Hospitals and clinics, many of which had been under-resourced and overcrowded before the disaster, were overwhelmed by the influx of injured and sick people. Medical supplies quickly ran out, and healthcare workers were forced to operate under extreme conditions, often without electricity or running water. The destruction of the main teaching hospital in Port-au-Prince was a significant blow to the country's medical infrastructure, leaving many without access to critical care. Transportation infrastructure was also severely damaged. Roads were blocked by debris, and many bridges were destroyed, cutting off access to remote areas. The Port-au-Prince airport, while still functional, was overwhelmed by the sudden influx of international aid, leading to delays in the distribution of supplies. The destruction of the port further complicated the logistics of bringing in aid and rebuilding materials. In the days following the earthquake, the international community responded with an outpouring of support. Governments, NGOs, and individuals from around the world mobilized to provide aid to the stricken nation. The United Nations, which had already been present in Haiti with a peacekeeping mission, played a central role in coordinating the global response. Countries such as the United States, Canada, France, and many others sent rescue teams, medical personnel, and humanitarian supplies to Haiti. The U.S. military established a significant presence, helping to restore order, distribute aid, and provide medical care. NGOs, both large and small, set up operations on the ground, working alongside local organizations to deliver food, water, shelter, and medical assistance. The global response was unprecedented in scale, but it also highlighted significant challenges. The sheer volume of aid entering the country created bottlenecks in distribution, with supplies piling up at the airport and port while people in need went without. The lack of coordination among the many organizations operating in Haiti led to inefficiencies and duplication of efforts. Despite these challenges, the international aid effort provided critical relief to millions of Haitians. Emergency food distribution helped stave off famine, while medical teams treated thousands of injuries and prevented the outbreak of diseases such as cholera. The presence of international forces helped maintain order in the chaotic environment, preventing widespread looting and violence. While the immediate response to the earthquake focused on saving lives and providing emergency relief, the long-term recovery process proved to be an even greater challenge. Rebuilding Haiti would require more than just repairing physical infrastructure. It would require addressing deep-rooted issues of poverty, governance, and social inequality. One of the most pressing challenges was the need to rebuild homes and provide permanent shelter for the millions of displaced people. However, the lack of land tenure laws and the chaotic nature of land ownership in Haiti complicated efforts to relocate people and rebuild communities. Many people were reluctant to leave the makeshift camps, fearing they would lose their claims to their land or that new homes would not be built in safe locations. Reconstruction efforts were also hampered by the slow disbursement of international aid. While billions of dollars were pledged by governments and organizations around the world, much of the money was tied up in bureaucratic processes, leading to delays in funding for critical projects. Corruption and mismanagement of funds further undermined the recovery process, with many Haitians feeling that the aid was not reaching those who needed it most. The aftermath of the earthquake left Haiti at a crossroads. The destruction was so complete that it offered an opportunity to rebuild not just physical structures, but also the social and economic systems that had contributed to the country's vulnerability. However, the path to recovery was fraught with challenges and progress was slow. For many Haitians, the struggle to rebuild their lives became a daily reality. While some were able to return to their homes or find new housing, many remained in temporary shelters for years after the earthquake. The lack of economic opportunities and the slow pace of reconstruction left many feeling hopeless and forgotten. Despite the hardships, there were also stories of resilience and hope. Communities came together to support one another, and local organizations played a crucial role in the recovery process. The earthquake had exposed the weaknesses of Haiti's institutions, but it had also shown the strength and determination of its people. The struggle for recovery in Haiti is ongoing, and the road ahead remains difficult. The earthquake was a defining moment in the country's history, one that reshaped its future and left a lasting impact on its people. The efforts to rebuild Haiti continue, driven by the hope that out of the rubble, a stronger and more resilient nation can emerge. The 2010 Haiti earthquake was a catastrophe that profoundly altered the course of the nation's history. The earthquake's legacy extends far beyond the immediate destruction and loss of life. It is a story of resilience, recovery, and the ongoing challenges that the Haitian people continue to face. The earthquake left an indelible mark on Haiti, reshaping its landscape, society, and economy. Entire communities were wiped out, and the physical scars of the disaster are still visible today in the ruined buildings and makeshift camps that persist across the country. The earthquake also had a deep psychological impact, leaving many Haitians grappling with trauma and loss. The memory of the disaster is a constant presence in the national consciousness, a reminder of the vulnerability and fragility of life. The disaster also brought to light the profound challenges that Haiti faced long before the earthquake. Poverty, political instability, and weak infrastructure had made the country especially vulnerable to such a disaster, and the earthquake exposed these systemic issues in stark relief. The struggle to rebuild Haiti in the aftermath of the earthquake became a symbol of the broader struggle for justice, equality, and development in the nation. In the wake of the earthquake, the international community rallied around Haiti, providing unprecedented levels of aid and support. The world's response was a testament to global solidarity, with governments, NGOs, and individuals from all corners of the globe coming together to help a nation in need. However, the international response was also fraught with challenges and controversies. The slow pace of aid disbursement, the lack of coordination among relief efforts, and allegations of corruption and mismanagement all hindered the recovery process. Despite these issues, the global response played a crucial role in saving lives and stabilizing the country in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. International aid provided critical resources for rebuilding infrastructure, healthcare, and education, and many of these efforts continue to this day. However, the experience of the earthquake also highlighted the limitations of foreign aid and the importance of empowering local communities to lead their own recovery. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the 2010 Haiti earthquake is the resilience of the Haitian people. In the face of unimaginable adversity, Haitians showed incredible strength and determination, coming together to rebuild their lives and their communities. Local organizations, grassroots movements, and individual acts of kindness and solidarity played a crucial role in the recovery process, often filling gaps left by international efforts. The road to recovery has been long and difficult, and many challenges remain. Haiti continues to struggle with poverty, political instability, and the effects of natural disasters. The process of rebuilding has been slow, and many of the promises made in the aftermath of the earthquake have yet to be fulfilled. But the resilience of the Haitian people offers hope for the future. Over the years, Haiti has taken steps toward recovery and development, New infrastructure has been built, healthcare and education have improved in some areas, and there have been efforts to strengthen governance and reduce corruption. While progress has been uneven and setbacks frequent, there is a sense that Haiti is slowly moving forward. The 2010 Haiti earthquake offers many lessons for the world. It is a stark reminder of the importance of disaster preparedness and the need to address the underlying vulnerabilities that make some communities more susceptible to the impacts of natural disasters. It also highlights the complexities of international aid and the importance of ensuring that recovery efforts are inclusive, accountable, and driven by the needs and voices of those most affected. For Haiti, the earthquake was a turning point, a moment that exposed the deep-seated challenges facing the nation, but also one that sparked a renewed commitment to building a better future. The disaster forced the country to confront its vulnerabilities, but it also galvanized efforts to create a more resilient and equitable society. As Haiti continues to rebuild, the memory of the 2010 earthquake remains a powerful force in shaping the nation's future. The disaster left a legacy of loss and suffering, but it also sparked a renewed sense of solidarity and hope. The journey toward recovery is far from over, but the resilience and determination of the Haitian people offer a beacon of hope for the future. In the years since the earthquake, Haiti has faced many challenges, but it has also shown remarkable strength. The road ahead is uncertain, but there is a sense that out of the devastation, a stronger and more resilient Haiti can emerge. The 2010 earthquake will forever be a part of Haiti's history, but it does not define the country. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the power of resilience and the enduring hope for a better tomorrow. The 2010 Chile earthquake was one of the most powerful earthquakes in recent history. It occurred off the coast of central Chile on Saturday, February 27, 2010 at 3:34 in the morning local time. The earthquake had a magnitude of 8.8 and shook the region for about 3 minutes. It was felt across 6 Chilean regions, from Valparaiso in the north to Araucanía in the south, affecting nearly 80% of the country's population. This earthquake was the largest hit Chile since the devastating 19 Valdivia earthquake, which remains the most powerful earthquake ever recorded. As with previous quakes, this disaster left a lasting mark on the country's landscape and its people. The epicenter of the earthquake was located off the coast of Pelujehue, a small town in the Mall region. The earthquake was also felt as far away as Buenos Aires, Argentina, and even in parts of southern Peru. Chile's capital, Santiago, experienced intense shaking as well, though the worst damage occurred closer to the epicenter, particularly in the city of Concepcion. This earthquake, along with the resulting tsunami, had far-reaching consequences not only for Chile but also for distant locations like California and Japan. Warnings were issued across 53 countries in preparation for the tsunami's arrival. Chile is situated on the boundary between 2 tectonic plates, the Nazca and South American plates, making it particularly vulnerable to these types of natural disasters. The earthquake that struck Chile on February 27, 2010, formed along the converging boundary of the Nazca and South American tectonic plates. These plates have been moving toward each other for millions of years, creating what is known as a subduction zone. In this case, the Nazca plate is slowly being pushed underneath the South American plate at a rate of about 80 millimeters per year. Over time, pressure builds up along this fault line until it is released in the form of a massive earthquake. The 2010 Chile earthquake was the result of many years of accumulated stress between these 2 plates, finally releasing in a sudden and violent event. Before the earthquake, Chile had experienced several smaller tremors, but there was no clear indication that a major quake was imminent. Preparations for earthquakes in Chile were already part of life, as the country sits on one of the most active seismic zones in the world. People were accustomed to earthquake drills and preparedness measures. However, nothing could fully prepare them for the scale of destruction that was about to unfold. On the night of the earthquake, people in the affected areas were asleep when the ground began to shake violently. Buildings swayed, roads cracked, and the sound of crumbling structures filled the air as the earthquake continued for nearly 3 minutes, followed by strong aftershocks. As the earthquake struck, it unleashed unimaginable destruction across central Chile. The hardest hit areas included the cities of Concepcion, Arauco, and Coronel, which experienced the strongest shaking. In these areas, buildings collapsed, roads were destroyed, and entire communities were cut off from outside help. The capital city, Santiago, also suffered significant damage, though it was less severe than in other regions. The intense shaking caused massive blackouts, leaving 93% of the Chilean population without power. Communication lines were disrupted, making it difficult for people to contact loved ones or get emergency assistance. The earthquake also triggered a tsunami that devastated coastal towns, including the port city of Talcahuano. Waves crashed onto the shores, sweeping away homes, boats, and vehicles. The tsunami warnings issued across the Pacific helped prevent further loss of life, but some areas were caught off guard. Chilean officials later estimated that the combination of the earthquake and tsunami had left over 500 people dead, 25 missing, and countless others injured. The total economic losses were staggering, with estimates ranging between $15 and $30 billion. Coastal communities were particularly vulnerable, and their recovery would take years. In the immediate aftermath of the earthquake, the destruction was overwhelming. Entire towns lay in ruins, and many people were left homeless. Roughly 9% of the population in the affected areas lost their homes, and for days, thousands of people slept outside, afraid to return to their damaged buildings due to the threat of aftershocks. The government declared a state of catastrophe, and President Michelle Bachelet deployed military troops to restore order and assist in the rescue and relief efforts. Emergency services scrambled to provide aid to the injured and stranded, while volunteers and international organizations joined in the recovery efforts. The earthquake had a profound impact on Chile's natural environment. Coastal regions experienced significant changes, with some areas uplifted by up to 3 meters. These shifts caused new land masses to emerge, altering the local landscape permanently. The powerful earthquake also shifted entire cities. For example, Santiago moved nearly 28 centimeters to the west, while the city of Concepcion shifted over 3 meters. In addition to the devastation of buildings and infrastructure, the earthquake caused massive damage to nature, displacing wildlife and destroying ecosystems along the coast. The 2010 Chile earthquake had a lasting impact on the country and the world. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded, and its effects were felt far beyond Chile's borders. The disaster highlighted the importance of preparedness in earthquake-prone regions, and Chile's response to the earthquake demonstrated the resilience of its people. Although the recovery process was long and difficult, the country eventually rebuilt much of what was lost, and lessons were learned that would help improve future responses to similar disasters. In the years since the earthquake, Chile has continued to strengthen its infrastructure and emergency systems, ensuring that it is better prepared for the next major seismic event. The 2010 earthquake served as a reminder of the country's vulnerability to natural disasters, but also its capacity for recovery. For the families who lost loved ones, the earthquake remains a tragic memory, while for others it stands as a testament to the strength and unity that emerged in the face of one of the most powerful earthquakes in modern history. The 1964 Alaska earthquake, also known as the Great Alaskan Earthquake or the Good Friday Earthquake, was a devastating natural disaster that struck Alaska on the evening of March 27, 1964. The quake occurred at 5:36 p.m. Alaska Standard Time and is remembered as one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. With a magnitude of 9.2, it remains the largest earthquake in North American history and the second largest globally since modern seismography began in 1900. This disaster took place in the south-central region of Alaska, affecting numerous cities and towns, including Anchorage, Seward, and Valdez. It lasted for nearly 4.5 minutes, but the destruction that followed was catastrophic. Massive ground fissures, landslides, and collapsing buildings wreaked havoc on the area, while a series of deadly tsunamis triggered by the quake caused further devastation along the Alaskan coastline and beyond. The backstory to this earthquake involves the slow but immense pressure that had built up between two tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. Over centuries, these plates had been pushing against each other, creating enormous stress deep beneath the Earth's surface. When that pressure finally released on that Good Friday in 1964, the impact was felt far and wide, not only in Alaska, but also in places as far away as Japan and California. In the days leading up to the quake, there were no clear signs or warnings. The people of Alaska, much like the rest of the world, were caught completely off guard, When the Earth began to shake violently that evening, the Alaska earthquake of 1964 was caused by the movement of the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. Alaska sits on the boundary between these two plates, which are part of the larger Pacific Ring of Fire, an area known for frequent seismic activity. For centuries, the Pacific plate had been slowly pushing beneath the North American plate in a process called subduction. As the plates moved, immense pressure built up where they met, and by March of 1964, that pressure was at its breaking point. On March 27th, the stress that had been accumulating beneath the Earth's crust was suddenly released, leading to the massive 9.2 magnitude earthquake. The rupture occurred about 15 miles below the surface, and it stretched across an area roughly 500 miles long and 125 miles wide. The force of the earthquake caused the ground to shake violently, and in some places, the land rose or sank by as much as 38 feet. In the first few moments of the quake, the ground motion was so intense that it made standing or walking impossible for anyone caught outside. Buildings swayed, roads cracked, and entire neighborhoods shifted as the ground beneath them heaved. As the earthquake continued for more than 4 minutes, it became clear that this was no ordinary tremor. People across Alaska were experiencing a catastrophe unlike anything they had ever seen. While the shaking was terrifying, the real damage was still to come. In the hours following the earthquake, massive aftershocks, some of them as strong as magnitude 7, continued to rattle the region, deepening the destruction. The impact of the 1964 Alaska earthquake on cities and towns was nothing short of catastrophic. Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, was hit particularly hard. Buildings that had once stood tall crumbled under the force of the earthquake. Entire sections of the city were leveled as the ground split open and buckled. In some neighborhoods, houses were ripped apart as the land beneath them shifted dramatically. The city's downtown area saw significant damage, with large structures collapsing and streets becoming impassable due to deep cracks and fissures. Seward, a small town located near the epicenter, experienced unimaginable devastation. The earthquake triggered landslides that tore through the town, and within minutes, fires broke out as fuel tanks exploded. But the worst was yet to come. Minutes after the earthquake, a massive tsunami hit the town, washing away buildings, docks, and everything in its path. The water surged through the streets, dragging debris and leaving a trail of destruction. In Valdez, another coastal town, the earthquake's impact was equally devastating. A section of the waterfront slid into the sea, taking homes and buildings with it. Valdez also faced a terrifying tsunami that swept away parts of the town. Waves as high as 200 feet hit the coastline, and residents who had survived the initial earthquake now faced the deadly power of the sea. Kodiak, located further south, also suffered from the earthquake's impact. The powerful shaking caused severe damage to the town, and within minutes, the tsunami hit, destroying homes and businesses. The water rose rapidly, submerging large areas and leaving destruction in its wake. The port, a vital part of the town's economy, was wiped out as the tsunami waves obliterated docks and boats. Beyond the immediate destruction, the earthquake also caused landslides and avalanches across Alaska's rugged terrain. Whole mountainsides collapsed, and in remote areas, entire forests were flattened. The impact was felt far beyond Alaska, with shaking reported as far away as California and Japan. The aftermath of the 1964 Alaska earthquake was as challenging as the disaster itself. The destruction was widespread, leaving thousands of people without homes, businesses in ruins, and entire communities cut off from the outside world. In Anchorage, nearly every major building had been damaged or destroyed, leaving residents to grapple with the loss of their homes, schools, and workplaces. Temporary shelters were quickly set up to house those who had been displaced, but the scale of the damage meant that recovery would take years. One of the most devastating effects of the earthquake was the destruction of infrastructure. Roads and bridges were wiped out or severely damaged, making it nearly impossible to reach some of the most affected areas. The main highway connecting Anchorage to other parts of Alaska had collapsed in many places, and in the coastal towns, the destruction of ports and harbors left communities isolated. Relief efforts were hampered by these challenges as rescuers struggled to reach those in need. The U.S. military played a crucial role in the disaster response, deploying resources to help with search and rescue operations and to deliver supplies to the hardest-hit areas. Military planes and helicopters flew over remote parts of the state, dropping food, water, and medical supplies to isolated communities. Naval ships were sent to coastal towns like Valdez and Seward, where the combination of the earthquake and the tsunami had caused near total devastation. The psychological impact on the people of Alaska was profound. Many who had survived the earthquake were left traumatized by the loss of loved ones, homes, and livelihoods. The constant aftershocks, some of which were strong enough to cause further damage, kept the population in a state of fear and uncertainty for weeks after the initial earthquake. In total, more than 100 aftershocks were recorded in the first 24 hours alone, and they continued for months, adding to the already immense sense of unease. As the initial shock wore off, the long process of rebuilding began. Volunteers and relief organizations from across the country came to Alaska to help with the recovery efforts. Engineers and construction crews worked tirelessly to repair the infrastructure, rebuild homes, and restore vital services. But despite these efforts, the full recovery would take years, and some of the damage, particularly in coastal areas like Valdez, was so severe that entire communities had to be relocated. In the years following the 1964 Alaska earthquake, the state gradually rebuilt itself, but the scars of the disaster were long-lasting. The earthquake left an indelible mark, not just on the land, but on the people of Alaska, who had to adapt to the new reality of living in a region with such immense geological power. Buildings and infrastructure were redesigned to be more earthquake-resistant, and new safety protocols were developed to ensure that communities would be better prepared for future disasters. One of the most important changes that came out of the earthquake was a greater understanding of seismic activity, particularly in Alaska. Scientists from all over the world flocked to the state in the aftermath of the disaster, studying the effects of the earthquake and the tsunamis that followed. Their research led to important advances in the field of seismology, including the development of better monitoring systems that could provide early warnings of future quakes. This knowledge would go on to inform earthquake preparedness efforts not just in Alaska, but in other earthquake-prone regions around the world. For many of the survivors, the memories of March 27, 1964, never faded. The earthquake had taken lives, destroyed homes, and reshaped entire communities, but it also brought out the resilience and strength of the Alaskan people. Stories of courage, sacrifice, and solidarity became part of the collective memory as residents supported each other through the darkest hours and rebuilt their communities from the ground up. The earthquake also left a legacy of awareness and preparedness. Public education campaigns were launched to ensure that Alaskans knew how to respond in the event of another major quake. Regular drills and preparedness exercises became part of life in schools and workplaces across the state, ensuring that future generations would be ready if and when disaster struck again. In the end, the 1964 Alaska earthquake remains one of the most powerful natural disasters in U.S. history. It reshaped not just the physical landscape of Alaska, but also the mindset of its people, creating a legacy of resilience and preparedness. While the state has seen other disasters in the years since, none have left a mark quite like the Good Friday earthquake, a day that forever changed Alaska.